Hey you guys, it is me, Laura. I'm a homeschooling mom to 3 kids ages 5, 9, and 12. And today I'm going to share with you my January reading wrap up. This will include books that I've read to and with the kids for homeschool. It will include books that I've read for myself. I'm working on writing curriculum right now, like not just for us, but like to share. And so some of these books are research for that. And there's just a whole lot in here, and I figured the best way to share with you would be to go ahead and flip the camera around and show you my reading journal from the month. And if this is something you guys would like to see every month, let me know. I know that as my kids get a little bit older, it's more challenging to know what to talk about on my channel here on YouTube, because I want to be sharing stuff that is useful and helpful for homeschool. But once the kids get older, they're a little bit more private about their stuff, which totally makes sense. And there's just not as much pretty stuff. There's not as much stuff to talk about. But if there's anything you guys would like to see, please let me know. And I will go ahead and turn the camera around and show you in my journal what I have been reading this month. Most of my books this month were audio. We've been doing a lot of traveling and I get very motion sick, so I can listen to books when we travel, but I struggle with reading them. But I'll show you some books, but mostly I'll walk you through here, and I have pictures of all the covers in here, so that will be a good way to do it. So I'm working on the Build Your Library Reading Challenge, and right now I'm just reading books, and if they fit the challenge, then I'm marking them off, but I'm not really working specifically hard to make sure that I get these. I'll kind of fill that in at the end. But so far I read a book with an insect or arachnid on the cover, and that was, let's see if I can find it here. The Reason I Jumped, there are lots of butterflies, which would classify as an insect. And then I also read With a Tree on the cover. So that's the book Fish in a Tree. With flowers and or plants on the cover, I read Esperanza Rising with my 6th grader, and that has a rose on the cover. And with a disabled character, I read Out of My Mind, which was an excellent book, and that's exactly what it was about. So I'm making a dent in this. There's a couple others that I penciled in because I could technically fill them out, but I might have a better book for it later, so I kind of just penciled those in. So I have my book log. I finished 8 books this month. I had 2 that were 5-star books, and I abandoned 5 books this month. So for me, if I am not enjoying a book, I just don't read it. There are so many good books out there. I will rarely rate a book less than 3 stars, because if it's a 2-star or a 1-star book, honestly, I would rather spend my time reading books that I enjoy. Excuse my kids, they're getting ready to go outside with my husband, and my little one's being very loud. So this month I read 958 pages in the physical books, so that doesn't count. That counts things that I actually read. That doesn't count audiobooks. I finished 8 books again, and I abandoned 5. So these are the books that I was looking at. So I read Esperanza Rising with my son for his literature, and I gave that book a 4 stars. I did enjoy it. It wasn't my favorite book, but it was really good. I felt like it gave a pretty good perspective on things during the Great Depression, especially from a different perspective, someone coming from Mexico and that whole experience. So we enjoyed that together, and we did a lot of extra research outside of the book as well, and we really enjoyed that. So this book, A History of the Bible, the story of the world's most influential book. Oh my goodness, you guys, this book was like a brick. So huge and really, really, really deep. So I didn't actually finish this. I read the first 310 pages, which I would say is pretty good. And I skimmed some of the end, but it was just really about a history of the Bible itself, where the documents came from, how culture affected it, just going through all the different parts of the Bible, and just a whole lot. And I found it very interesting. I learned a lot from it, but I felt by the time I got to the 310 page mark, I pretty much got what I needed out of it. I also had to take it back to the library, so there's that. So this one is the Cottage Fairy Companion, and I actually have this one to show you. So this I haven't finished because the book is broken down by season. And so I read the winter season 1, and I think this is one that I'm going to want, as the seasons change over, to read each section with. This is by Paula, and she has a YouTube channel, The Cottage Fairy, and I will link that below. And I just really appreciate her channel. I find her videos to be a huge stress reliever for me. So sometimes I will just play her videos and just let myself calm down, and it's wonderful. And so far, I've really been enjoying this book, and I look forward to reading it more throughout the year. So this is one that I'm reading right now. It's called Reading for Our Lives, and it's about readiness. A lot of times when we think of reading and what kids need, the foundations they need, a lot of times we hear people say, oh, just read lots of books, but there's also actually a lot more to it than that. And so this goes over the 6 main areas that are needed to build a good foundation for literacy. And I'm reading this primarily as research for the curriculum that I'm writing, but it's okay. It's not like a book I'm like, oh yes, everyone should read, but I'm getting some things out of it and I'm enjoying it. This was the Enchanted Hour, about reading aloud and the importance of reading aloud at home. This was an audiobook. I didn't finish this one. I abandoned it about 33% of the way through. And part of the struggle that I have with a lot of, especially parenting type nonfiction books, is that people are very, very, very passionate about one thing, and it feels kind of overwhelming and unbalanced to me. And so I really, really struggle with them. And I feel like this is true. Reading aloud can be really enchanting, and it can be really amazing for a family. And there are a lot of really awesome benefits to it. But I felt like the author was really attributing more to reading aloud than was really reasonable. And I just kind of felt like there were some big leaps to what reading aloud can actually do, and there were a lot of other pieces that were missing. So I just kind of stopped because I was getting frustrated with it. But I can see how, for someone who doesn't understand the value in reading aloud at all, how that could be helpful. I also read this one. This is a really tiny book, The Busy Parent's Guide to Anxiety by Lori Hallman, PhD. I would not recommend this if you are looking for a book on a child with anxiety. I felt like it was completely unhelpful, and it gave you a bunch of obvious tips and things that you would obviously do. And if those things worked, I wouldn't need to be reading a book. So I didn't find that one helpful at all. So I did finish it because it was so short, and I was thinking, well, it's so short that if there is even a little bit in there that I can get from it, it'd be worth it. But there wasn't, so I gave it 1 star. This book I absolutely loved. It was a 5-star book. It's a kind of spark, and it is about Elle McNoll. Elle McNoll is the author, but it is about a girl who is autistic, and the story is being told from her point of view. The author herself is autistic, and when she published this book, it was kind of scary for her because it was the first time she was kind of saying publicly that she was autistic. And it really, the main character becomes fascinated with the witch trials in Scotland and realizes that a lot of these people who were accused of witchcraft may have actually been autistic themselves. And it is just such an amazing journey, such a good book. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I also have my map here about Scotland because this is set in Scotland. So I highly recommend this. It is super powerful, and I think it is a great book. So this one is View From Here. I actually got this one when it first came out. It was the first book that I saw that was really about the pandemic, and I was excited to read a book about the pandemic and see what all of that was about. But this is my second time trying to read this book, and I just can't really get into it. So it's written in first person present, which is very hard for me anyway. I don't prefer that type of writing, but I can get through that sometimes if it's a really good book. But I just could not get into this one. And so 23% of the way in, I was like, you know what? I've given this a good go, and I just don't think that I'm going to get into it. So I abandoned that one, and then I read Fish in a Tree. So this one has been recommended to me for many, many years, but to be completely honest, I don't like the cover. And I know that sounds so silly, but I haven't read it because I don't like the cover. And that was just a really, really bad call on my part, because it is an absolutely wonderful book. It is my second 5-star book from this month. And it is about a girl, Allie, who has dyslexia. And she seems like she's a troublemaker, but she's really not. She's just trying to cover up the fact that she can't read. And she finally has a teacher who figures out what's going on, and it's a story about Allie really coming into herself with her dyslexia, and it's just such a good story. So this one is Thread Collectors. I am definitely trying to read more adult books this year, and I was excited about the premise of this one. It explores the Jewish and Black couples during the Civil War, and I was really interested in the story, one of the storylines that wove through this about Stella and William. So this is a slave and the other slave that she loves, but they were not able to get married or do anything, and she was actually a mistress to her slave owner. And I found their story really compelling. But there was also another storyline with Lily and Jacob, who was a Jewish couple. I found their storyline to be slow, and there were so many other storylines woven throughout that I just was really, really struggling, and I felt like it was moving too slow, and 49% of the way through the book, I just abandoned it. But I love the premise, and I think that it could have been really well, and I was kind of sad, but that was that one. So Out of My Mind was another super awesome book. This is about a girl who has cerebral palsy, and she's unable to communicate, but she is brilliant, and she is able to get connected with some technology that lets her share the thoughts in her mind, and she has some pretty amazing experiences and gets to do some pretty awesome things at her school, and this is a really, really good one as well. This one is 180 Days. This is a teacher development book, an education development book, and it takes these two language arts teachers in high school and looks at how they plan out their 180 days of school, how they work with it, how they get all the information in and everything. And I felt like this was a useful picture for me to get as I'm writing curriculum as well. It obviously was not as helpful to me because I'm not in a classroom setting, and it wasn't super interesting. I felt like a lot of the book was kind of, I don't know, it wasn't as helpful. It wasn't exactly, I was hoping for a little bit more of a breakdown. Like, it was a very big picture overview. I think I was hoping to see a few more details, but I am glad I read it. I did get some good things out of it, and so there's that. This one is The Reason I Jump, which is written by a child with a 13-year-old, I believe, with autism, and it's basically him answering a lot of questions that people have, and then it ends with kind of an allegory that he wrote. The format of the book was very difficult for me. It was really just like a question answer, not so much a story. And I think that it was really interesting, and I learned a lot of interesting things. I didn't really understand the allegory at the end. I think it's because it was a very told in the way that stories are told in the Eastern culture, and I'm just not as familiar with that. So it's very difficult for me to understand. But I think it was a really, really good book to read. It just was not, something that I was super excited about. I also read this one. This is another teacher development book, Worth 1,000 Words, and it's really about using graphic novels as a primary text to learn from. This I felt very similarly to the other one. There were loads of lesson examples and things set up, and if you are a classroom teacher, this would be, you could just use their lesson plans and go with it and be great. It's much more challenging to translate into a homeschool setting, and I felt like so much of this book spent time telling me what they were going to tell me that if they took out all the parts where they told me what they were going to tell me and just told me the thing without telling me they were going to tell me first, it would have been a lot shorter and a lot easier to kind of digest. But I am glad that I read this book, and it got me thinking about some things in relation to graphic novels, if I'm going to be doing novel studies on those that I wouldn't have thought about normally. Graphic novels are not something I'm super familiar with as far as teaching from them, and so I felt like this was a really good way to kind of question my thinking some, and I gave that 3.5 stars. This book is Hands. It just came out, and I was actually really excited about it. It's about a boy who's trying to decide how he's going to use his hands. Is he going to fight? Is he going to protect his siblings? Is he going to be, someone like that, or is he going to use his hands to do art? And anyway, he's got to figure all of that out. And this is not a really long book. I was super excited about the premise, but just the language and the style of the writing was super hard for me to follow. I could see how it would definitely be very appealing to the demographic that it is written for, but I am not that demographic, and I just was really struggling to get through it, so I didn't get very far, and I went ahead and abandoned that one as well. And this is the one that I'm reading right now, called Figure It Out, Henry Weldon, and I actually have this one. So I had not heard of this book, but I was covering new books that came in at the library where I work, and I found this one, and I said, oh, I need to cover this one so I can take it home. So I did, and it is about a girl who has dysgraphia, and she is in 7th grade, and she is trying to navigate a new school and navigate, not dysgraphia. Did I say dysgraphia? I meant dyscalculia. So dyscalculia, if you're not familiar with it, is where the brain has a hard time with numbers in general and directionality and all the things that are related to math. And so she is struggling with that, and I'm not very far into it, so I still have a lot to learn, but I'm enjoying it, and I hope to know more about it by the end of the month. So that is where I am right now. I am right on track as far as all of my goals, and as far as meeting my book count and all of that. And I am with the boys right now. I'm reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with my 4th grader. I'm reading The Fellowship of the Rings with my 6th grader, and I'm excited to continue to share those with them and with some of the things that are coming up. And I'm eager to find out what I read. I'll be doing a whole lot more traveling this month, so I'm sure I'll be listening to more audiobooks, and I look forward to sharing with you what I have coming up. I hope that you guys are having a great day. If you have any questions for me, leave them below, and I will try to leave some links for you guys below as well. And I hope you're having a great day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.